In the wake of the civil rights movement, a prevailing narrative suggested that America had largely overcome its racial demons. The overt, legally sanctioned racism of the Jim Crow era was dismantled, leading many to believe that the nation was on a clear path to a post-racial society. However, this perspective overlooks a more insidious and arguably more potent transformation. Rather than being eradicated, racism evolved. It morphed from a visible, blatant system of oppression into a complex, self-perpetuating structure, a Hydra whose heads regenerate even when severed. This new form of structural racism became more powerful precisely because it became invisible, deeply embedded within the very fabric of our social, economic, and political institutions, solidifying a caste system that persists to this day. The fundamental challenge of this modern era is understanding that racism is systemic, not merely a collection of individual prejudices. The core problem is the perpetuation of a deeply ingrained caste system, legitimized and maintained through laws, policies, institutions, and practices. These mechanisms often appear neutral on their surface, yet their application results in a profoundly disparate impact across racial lines. Consider the historical practice of redlining, where federal housing policies explicitly delineated neighborhoods, effectively barring African Americans from securing mortgages in desirable areas. This created a legacy of segregated communities, characterized by artificially suppressed property values, chronic underinvestment, and underfunded schools. Decades later, the so-called war on drugs provides another stark example. While framed as a race-neutral policy aimed at public safety, its enforcement disproportionately targeted Black and brown communities, leading to mass incarceration that shattered families, destabilized neighborhoods, and disenfranchised millions. Even in our technologically advanced present, the ghost of this caste system haunts us through algorithmic bias, where automated systems in hiring or lending, trained on historically biased data, replicate and amplify discriminatory outcomes under a veneer of objectivity. These are not isolated incidents, but interconnected manifestations of a system designed, consciously or not, to maintain a pre-existing social hierarchy. A key feature of this evolved racism is its plausible deniability. Because the mechanisms of discrimination are no longer overt, there are no whites-only signs, it becomes easy for society to deny that race is a significant factor in determining life outcomes. The resulting inequalities can be conveniently explained away by invoking concepts like culture, personal responsibility, or a supposed lack of merit. This narrative conveniently ignores the centuries of systemic barriers and historical disadvantages that created the very conditions it purports to critique. This defensibility makes it incredibly difficult to marshal the collective political will necessary to dismantle a system that has been centuries in the making. Furthermore, the biases of the past have become automated and baked into the architecture of our society. You no longer need a consciously racist bank manager to deny a loan to a qualified Black family. The historical data reflecting decades of discriminatory lending practices, when fed into a loan-issuing algorithm, can produce the exact same result. The outcome appears to be an objective, data-driven, and colorblind decision, effectively masking the discriminatory lineage from which it was born. This systemic invisibility has given rise to a colorblind ideology that, while sounding virtuous, actively perpetuates inequality. The dominant societal narrative that proclaims, "I do not see color," is profoundly damaging because it intentionally blinds itself to the reality of racial stratification. By refusing to see race, we refuse to acknowledge the vastly unequal outcomes that race-based structures continue to produce every single day. This ideology creates a paradox. It prevents us from using the necessary race-conscious solutions required to fix deeply entrenched race-based problems. How can one remedy an injustice one refuses to see? Consequently, the burden of proof is unjustly shifted onto the victims of the system. In the era of overt racism, the harm, a lynching, a bombing, a segregated water fountain, was visible and undeniable. Today, individuals disadvantaged by the system are tasked with the nearly impossible and emotionally exhausting feat of proving that an invisible, multifaceted structure, and not their own personal failings, is the root cause of their struggle. Ultimately, the path toward a society built on genuine meritocracy and human solidarity requires a direct confrontation with this reality. We cannot build a just future on a foundation of denial. The goal must be the complete and deliberate dismantlement of the caste system that undergirds American society. Only by removing its tendrils from our laws, our institutions, and our collective consciousness can we hope to create a world where an individual's potential is not predetermined by their position in a centuries-old hierarchy. The only way to true merit and universal solidarity is to finally and unequivocally end the caste system.